Betting into the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty, and here is our contractually obligated opening theme music. And sorry, I know that's annoying, but that assures you, gentle listener, that this is a high-quality, high-production values podcast, lovingly handcrafted, artisanally made, bespoke. So you're not listening to some junky podcast, no, ladies and gentlemen. This is quality stuff. And here, now that my silly patter is over, I've got two great game designers, Tristan Zimmerman and Craig Campbell. Tristan has won a Judges Spotlight Award from the ENNIES for Shantyhunters. Congratulations, sir. And there we go, Shantyhunters. And Mr. Craig Campbell has been nominated for, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, Best Family Game and Best Rules for Good Strong Hands.
That is correct.
So congratulations to both of you. Golf claps all around. Congratulations to both of you guys. This is a great honor. I'd just like to point out, I've talked to you both on this podcast before, so I think maybe it's the cachet you had from being on the BAF podcast that really put you over that hump.
That's it. That's what it was.
And Craig, you won a BAMFC a couple years ago, so you know.
I did. I won a BAMFC a couple years ago. This is actually, I never really talked about it a great deal, but this is nomination 2 and 3 for the ENNIES. I was nominated for Best Free Product a few years ago for the PDF. It's die laughing sliced up, which is basically the quick start rules for die laughing. So it's like the game truncated down to like a little tiny PDF thing. I didn't win, but I got nominated for that.
Well, it's an honor to be nominated, but even better to win. But of course, it's an honor to be nominated because there's a weird alchemy going on behind the scenes with awards. Who can say? But we should encourage.
The way I look at it is the nominations, of course, are done by a panel of 5 judges, and the judges are voted upon and they change every year. But the nominations are done by 5 people who have ostensibly read everything that they're looking at, whereas the winning is just determined by popularity contest, right? Everybody goes online and you should vote. You should vote, particularly for Craig's work. And I got a couple other things I'd like to encourage people to vote for tonight. But it's ultimately a popularity contest, whereas the nominations, like, that's somebody that is 5 somebody saying, look, we had to read a lot of garbage over the past year that got sent our way for self-nomination. And these are the things that we think are best. So really, I do think that the nomination is the honor, and the winning is terrific, right? Not knocking it. It's great. But the nomination is where it's at.
Yeah, there's certainly something to be said about that. I mean, I went through and did a count at one point because I was curious. It was over 800 entries for the ENNIES, and that's across all different types of books and games and supplements and adventures and accessories and whatnot, as well as podcasts and streaming, actual play streams and blog sites and all that sort of thing. And then it was over 300 game books that were tagged as core books. So when you look at the categories that typically are like best game, best production, best sometimes there are accessories and adventures that get into things like best art and best cover and some of that stuff too. But many of the game categories, outside of the very specific ones like best monster or best accessory or best adventure, tend to be heavy on core game books. Over 300 of those this year. So to get 2 nominations in a kind of strong core game book category, I was like blown away. I thought, like, I entered 2 games that I thought, maybe I'll get nominated one time for one of them.
Well, Craig, I've been following your work for a lot of years, and you put out quality stuff, sir. So I'm not surprised that you get nominated. So congratulations again. And let me just say to anyone out there listening to us on iTunes or wherever, we rigged up a tiny URL for ENNIES, just tinyurl.com/ENNIES 2022. You can go and vote. And that's much easier to say over the air than the very long on Willie ENNIES voting URL. But you should go. You should vote for Craig. Like we said, he is in Best Rules and Best Family Game. And I guess while we're talking about that, this is a good opportunity to mention Good Strong Hands is what you're nominated for.
Yep.
And because I'm a conscientious and prepared host, I whipped up a tiny URL for Good Strong Hands too, which is just tinyurl.com/Good Strong Hands. And Craig, this is a beautiful book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's my homage to like the fantasy movies of my youth, which is to say, because I'm a 50-year-old man, it's the fantasy movies of the 80s. So things like Neverending Story, Labyrinth, Legend, Willow, Dark Crystal, all of those. So there's a lot of fairy tale vibes. I specifically designed everything kind of stripped out a lot of your really classic fantasy trope stuff. There's no elves, no dwarves, no gnomes, no halflings, no ogres, no drow. There's dragons because you got to have dragons. But then there's a lot of other kind of interesting stuff.
Are there pecs?
No, nothing. There's no. Well, there's. I mean, there's brownies and red caps. There's a number of different fairy folk type characters to play. Nothing, not specifically pecs, which is, I believe, as I recall, the derogatory name that they give, that the humans call Willow's people in the movie Willow. But there was a time where I came very close to having like a gnome type character, because there's a number of kind of gnome-ish types in Legend and in Labyrinth. But then ultimately I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna get all of that stuff out of there, because a lot of that has kind of baggage that comes with it, and some of it is not good baggage. And I thought, like, you know, there's plenty of games out there where you can play a dwarf. You don't need another one. So I figured, you know, it'd be much more interesting to play a paragon, which is like the perfect like intelligent, sapient version of a given animal. Like you can play Aslan or Mr. Beaver, you know. And there's a bunch of different fairy you know, fae types. There's fawns and pixies and redcaps and brownies, and then you know, some stuff of my own concoction too, which are wildkin, that came out of Sir Didymus from Labyrinth, the little fox guy with his steed, with his trusty steed, and his sword. If you read the wildkin entry, like, it's very clearly, oh, there's like a fox wildkin is one of the types that you can be, and one of the talents that you can take is to have a trusty steed, and one of the talents you can have is to have a cool little weapon that's made perfectly for you. So yeah, there's some very blatant homage kind of stuff in there, and then there's just like stuff that's like tangentially inspired by those movies.
Can I throw a softball question at Craig?
Please.
So, Craig, could you talk some about something that I think is super duper cool about Good Strong Hands, which is the design you put into non-violent problem solving?
Yeah, the game is presented in such a way that there's basically, your character has 4 traits: body, mind, charm, and heart. And so there's nothing that's specifically called like attacking or combat or something like that. There's specialties that you can do that are like, there's one specialty that's called like fighting. But the game is not really geared toward, it's not built around the idea of solving problems inherently through fighting or combat. You can do that, but you could just as easily have characters that are specialized or very good in very disparate things, where one character maybe, you know, has their weapon and they can, you know, fight off the baddies, but the other people are using mind checks to trick them, and charm check, or mind checks, to trick them, or charm checks to try to talk them down or taunt them. And you can and like when you work to overcome a challenge, you just tally up successes on those toward whatever the challenge rating is, and all those other checks count as equally as swinging a sword. And then additionally in the game, when your character, there's different reasons that your character can accrue what's called shadow. You've got a track for shadow, and you check off boxes as you go, and if you fill up the shadow track, you gain a corruption, because the void, the thing that's trying to destroy the world, tries to corrupt you. And it's built into the game that if you kill a sapient creature, you gain shadow. So like just you know, murder takes you down the road toward the voids corrupting you.
I need to thank you for doing my work there, Tristan, because I was trying to think of a way to ask Craig about the roles that he was nominated for, and you did that for me. So
That
the check.
I am happy to ask that question because it is something that I think is super duper cool about Good Strong Hands, particularly given that it was nominated for Family Game. And I think that we as a hobby industry often default towards solving problems and resolving disputes with violence because that's what we came up with through D&D or World of Darkness or whatever. And to see it kind of baked into the core rules that no, talking it out counts towards successes to resolve what's going on just as much as swinging as you're swinging your sword does. Like, I think that's super duper swell.
I agree. I'm all about taking a more surprising and, if that's a pacifist, avenue to solve things, because it can get boring when you're just hacking things up for XP. And it's fun. It's good to see a game that deliberately takes a different path from that. So.
Well, and it's reflective of the source material that I was inspired by. There's not a lot of people getting killed by swords in those movies. Like Willow probably leans that direction a little bit. Legend, of course, there's like the big fight with darkness. But a lot of what happens in Neverending Story and Labyrinth, and it's more like dealing with riddles and trying to figure out what the problem is and working as a team. Like Legend is great for that. Like there's so many. Legend is an incredibly underrated movie in my opinion. There's so much great kind of dungeon crawl type stuff that's built around these characters, each doing the things that they're really good at. And very few of them have to do with swinging a sword. There's a lot of people doing stuff that's kind of trickstery. There's stuff that people are solving things by figuring out ways to reflect light into places and climb areas and navigate the underground realm. And there's a lot of different things that are going on.
Well, if you go back and read some of the old fairy tales, there's always some action, but there's an awful lot of puzzles to be solved and problems to be overcome through creativity or trickery. So and speaking of games that do things in a non-traditional way or interesting way, that's my awkward segue to talk about Shantyhunters from Tristan, which I think is a cool game. Why don't you describe it for our viewers, Tristan?
So Shantyhunters is a tabletop role-playing game about collecting magical sea shanties in the year 1880 and then singing them around the table with your friends. And then after you've collected a shanty, the lyrics of the song come to life and cause problems for the PCs, for the crew of the ship you're sailing aboard, and you have to deal with those problems. You have to look at the lyrics, try to anticipate what's going to happen before it happens, and save the ship from this wonderful song that you yourself just sang with your friends at the table. I think it's a lot of fun. That's the game in a nutshell. It's very much set in the year 1880. A lot of the book is purely optional details about seafaring and ports and wind and wave and weather, and of course about shanties and all these historically documented work songs for folks at home who may not be up on their shanties. Probably the one you're going to be most familiar with is Drunken Sailor. What shall we do with a drunken sailor? That one. And these are work songs. These are real historical work songs that sailors would sing in order to stay in time with one another while they were hauling on ropes or doing other activities that required everybody staying in time. That's
while they were hauling on the braces, as they say.
Correct.
And I, as a podcast host, I am obligated legally to mention the phenomena that was Wellerman that I still listen to at least weekly because my kid was introduced to that song in music class. So
if you're sick of that version, Gordon Bach does what I think is a much better version, but that's neither here nor there. That one that really blew up a few months, I want to say 8 months before I planned to go live with the Kickstarter. And I had to think like, oh God, Like, do I strike while the iron is hot? Everybody's doing sea shanties on TikTok. Like, do I release it early? And I had to tell myself, no, capitalizing on fads is a whole different marketing skill set. You barely have regular marketing skill set. Like, don't jump into hard mode right now. But boy, it was a tough decision.
You are a wiser man than me, sir. I might have tempted to try to catch that dragon, but yeah, it's a fun game. Because I am a prepared and conscientious host, I've worked up a tiny URL, tinyurl.com/Shantyhunter. You can go catch them right now on Drive-Thru RPG, and it's a fun game. You should check it out. And you are actually already a winner. You got a Judges Spotlight Award, so congratulations. I'm assuming they're going to mail you the. Oh, you're going to the ceremony. They'll probably give you the jumpsuit and the fancy hat and the trophy when you're there in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so they've already told me, hey, if you show up to the ceremony, we'll give you your medal right there. For the folks at home, the way it works is, we've already talked about how you have the nominations and then the voting, the popular voting, and then winners announced at Gen Con. But there are 5 slots that are not voted on. Each of the 5 judges gets to select a single product to spotlight, and they jump over the nomination and voting process. These 5 guys are just straight to Judges Spotlight winner, which is great because it means instead of grubbing for votes, I can encourage people to go vote for Craig's Good Strong Hands for Best Rules and Best Family Game, which is way more fun. I strongly recommend it.
Yeah, it's I have had several friends who've been nominated, and it's always, it's work, right? Because if you want to win, you got to go out and say, "Hey, I'm out here. You should go vote for me." And here's why. And it's a different kind of marketing, I guess.
Guess what I spent a few hours on today?
That exact thing.
Yep.
Well, you deserve to win, sir. I certainly hope it goes your way. But if not, I mean, like, as we said before, being nominated is itself an honor. And just remember,
I'm super appreciative of it, and the team is stoked, and we're gonna try to get the votes and see what happens. The upside to the ENNIES is they do give out a gold and a silver in each of the categories, so it's not just one product that's vying for the prize out of 5 nominees, or with game of the year is 10 nominees, because they do the Oscars thing where they give best movie to a whole bunch, like really make it nail bitey. But yeah, so like you've got a chance to win the gold or the silver. So even if there's like one entrant in a given category that you look at and you think, oh, that one's going to be the one that wins because it's a big name game from a big company that's got a big, loyal, dedicated fan base, there's still a chance for somebody else to pull the silver. And to be honest, there have been upsets in the past too. There have been times when like the big name didn't get the gold. So sometimes didn't get the gold or the silver. It does happen now and again.
Yeah, there are surprises, and this year,
because
go ahead, Tristan.
Oh, just a lot of it is not just which sold more copies. A lot of it is also who has the more energized fan base, right? So I brought another book here. I got a couple of books by me. Wonder Home by Jay Dragon got nominated for Best Cover and Best Interior Art. So here's the beautiful cover. Here's some beautiful interior art in Wonder Home. I mean, it's really, really, really lovely book, and I really hope it wins for at least one of those 2 art categories. And Jay, I'm sure, does not have the market that some of the other folks in Best Cover or Best Interior have. But what Jay does have is an enormously passionate fan base. And so, even if other folks maybe have sold more copies, I still think that Jay has a very real chance of taking home the gold on Wonder Home, just because of that really energized fan base.
Yeah, and I think we should point out that this year, some of the names you expect to see on the slate aren't there. I didn't see a whole bunch of entries from Fantasy Flight Games or Paizo or Wizards of the Coast this year. So I think maybe, if you're a smaller publisher, this might be a breakout year for you.
Paizo and WotC have stopped submitting themselves, because the way it works is you have to submit yourself, right? The ENNIES aren't just going to reach out and be like, we're going to consider you. WotC and I'm pretty sure Paizo as well both said, you know what, we are these giant companies, we don't need these awards. They're a little bit of a distraction for us, and let's make some room for some other people. I know the podcast Ken and Robin Talk About Stuff, which won Gold Annie for Best Podcast for pushing a decade, right?
Yes.
2 years ago said, you know what, we're going to stop submitting ourselves. This is a little silly. This is a little embarrassing. We're already one of the biggest podcasts out there. Like, we're punching down at this point. So they have stopped submitting themselves.
Yeah, there's a few people that did that sort of thing, because I remember going, seeing the ENnie nominations and talking to people at Gen Cons 5+ years ago, where it was like, oh, well, the Paizo just won their 7th ENnie and Wizards just won their 8th ENnie, and they were like, okay, yeah, well, out of those two companies win half the, are present in half the awards, either for a gold or a silver. It starts to get a little disheartening to some of the smaller people, the smaller groups and smaller publishers out there. And on top of it, we're in this kind of golden age of all sorts of people doing interesting things and experimental stuff on itch.io, and there's smaller games that are getting recognition. It doesn't have to be a 300-page super game that you spend 3 years developing. There's like all sorts of interesting smaller stuff that gets done. And I think, a number of the companies that were winning quite a bit or are very big, they backed off. And I think too, the judges kind of in the last few years have started to say, okay, maybe we'll nominate a few spots for like this bigger company or that bigger company, but there's this was a year of, I don't remember exactly all the nominations for the last year or the year before, but I know looking down this year's list, I was like, oh, there's a whole sorts of stuff here that I don't have any idea what this is, because it was indie stuff that just wasn't on my radar. And it's going to put eyes on a lot of smaller publishers, which is great.
I think a great example of what Craig was talking about is I just did a quick search of the list. There's only one nomination on here from Chaosium. Chaosium, of course, publisher of Call of Cthulhu. There's other Call of Cthulhu stuff on the list, but only one by Chaosium, by the parent company, for Best Supplement, Cults of Cthulhu. And I think that's just a really great example of potentially, we don't really know what's going on behind the scene with the judges, but potentially the judges saying, you know what, we know who you are, Chaosium. You don't you're doing just fine. Here's one nomination, so we can all acknowledge Chaosium is really cool. We all like Chaosium. Now let's make some room for somebody else, and maybe that's what's happening.
Well, we can certainly hope, and it's you talk to people on Twitter, and you get a lot of. I have a associate in the business who works at a large distribution company, and he has a lot of clients who are smaller publishers. He interacts with them on Twitter, and some days he's like, "Jesus, man, the fleas want the elephant to die," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot of hate towards the big publishers." But on the other hand, there are so many people out there doing really interesting work. It's nice for the awards to show some attention their way, shine spotlights on people doing interesting and innovative stuff in the field. So, but hey, appreciate you guys coming to talk to us. Once again, folks, tinyurl.com/ENNIES2000. I'm having a block on saying 2022. I don't even know why, but tinyurl.com/ENNIES2022. Go vote for Craig. Check out some of the other entrants, and find some new stuff. Vote and encourage your friends, your enemies. Tell your mom to vote. And we'll just one short month away. When is Gen Con? Mid-August, late August?
3 weeks.
First week.
Okay, so
First
it's coming
week of
up
August.
super fast.
3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks from right now. It's Friday at 9:30. 3 weeks from right now, I will be in the ENnie ceremony.
Oh, sweet.
I will be in the room. The ceremony will be anywhere between 50 and 75% over.
All right, cool.
At this time.
Well, you got it timed. What's the food like at the Ennies? I've always been curious.
They do like a mixer beforehand, but it's not like a dinner kind of thing. It's just they herd you all into a hall at 8 o'clock on Friday, and from 6 to 8 beforehand, there's like a hangout where you can get a drink and chit chat and network and whatnot. I've already got plans. I got to try to figure out a way to get me and a couple of people quickly over to dinner and then back over to the Ennies to get a chance to kind of talk to some folks and then sit down and be there for the ceremony.
Oh yeah, I guess as when you guys go, you don't have the fan experience at the convention. You guys are working, networking, and making things happen, making plans for the coming year, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll be at the Indie Game Developer Network booth number 132, the entire time, with the exception of like when I take a lunch break here and there. I'll be Nerdburger Games has a dedicated table in that booth. So Good Strong Hands and the whole Capers line and several other games will all be there. I've got lots of copies because I really stocked up. So I'm looking forward to selling out some stuff. Is that all possible?
Tristan, have you hanging out in that booth too sometimes?
So my answer is a little more complicated. I am this year very intentionally going as a fan and a gamer, not as a publisher. So I'll of course be helping set up and tear down the booth because, by God, I have a pair of good strong hands. So yeah, absolutely. I'm in my 30s. I'm going to help set up and tear down the booth. But I'm only running one game of Shantyhunters. I'm not going to be working in the booth at any point. I'll still swing by and hang out now and again. But I in previous years really tried to ramp up my publisher presence. Like, I'm going to be running a lot of games. I'm going to be volunteering a lot in the booth. And to be blunt, it wasn't as much fun as attending as a gamer. And I am super duper small potatoes, which means that it's not like I was getting very much, if any, money for all of my hard labor. So if I'm going to be paying all this money to drive out to Indy and stay in a hotel room, I'm going to have a great time instead of chasing dollars that Craig has an enormous back catalog of really cool games, right? And I do not. So if I don't have a great giant back catalog to sell, I'm going to be partying and playing cool RPGs.
Tristan, I am a little jealous. Because this push, this thing that I'm doing this year was supposed to happen 2 years ago, and we all know how that went. So yeah, like I've got a team coming with me. We're running over 20 events, and then I'm in the booth the whole time. So it's very much a publisher convention for me this year.
Well, just give me that booth number one more time in case listeners or viewers want to stop by and say hi, check out your game.
Yeah, booth 132. It's right on, aisle 1, like it's right next to a door. You're going to walk in and it's going to be boom right there. It's a 40-foot long booth with a big yellow sign. Can't miss it.
All the way on the left. All the way on the left side of the hall. And heck, if you're going to be over in aisle 1 anyway, that's also where the Ennies booth is. So you can walk over to the Ennies booth. They're going to have copies of all of the nominated products at the Ennies booth, and you can leaf through them. And if any of those jump out at you, they're always happy to point you in the direction of the booth that sells it. And so, you'll open up a copy of Shantyhunters and say, "Oh, what booth is this?" And they'll point you right to our booth number, which, what number was that again, Craig?
132.
132.
All right. Well, hey, guys, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. All listeners and viewers, thanks for checking out the Banff podcast. Go to booth 132 when you're at Gen Con. Say hi to Craig for sure. If you show up early during, build-up, maybe you can say hi to Tristan. And make sure you go to tinyurl.com/Ennies2022 and vote. And we will catch you next time on the Banff podcast.
Good night, everybody.